Welcome to Midnight Menu Plus One. I'm Ray Canada.
And I'm Margot Moss. Midnight Menu Plus One is a food lifestyle show on the podcast network itsneworleans.com.
Each week on Midnight Menu Plus One, Margot and I invite a member of New Orleans restaurant and food community to join us, and we invite them to bring along their own guest, a plus one. We never know who the plus one's going to be. Sometimes it's a friend, a neighbor, a family member, a fellow restaurant colleague. But our special guest tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One is Lauren Godin.
And if you're hungry for more Midnight Menu Plus One than we can dish up here, we have all kinds of extra stuff on our website, itsneworleans.com. You can check out our blog, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or just Google Midnight Menu Plus One and we come right up.
Midnight Menu is brought to us tonight by Wayfare. Wayfare is a fabulous restaurant and bar on Ferret Street, uptown. There are a lot of places to get great food in New Orleans. Take it from me, I've eaten at lots of them, but there's no place doing what Wayfare is doing. Chef Kevin White comes from a fine dining background, and he's putting all this training, experience, and taste into sandwiches.
And he's taking a sandwich to a whole new place. At Wayfare, they also have equally great salads, appetizers, and small plates you can enjoy at the bar.
And you know what? It's cheap. You pay the same or less for the price of a sandwich in other places, and you're getting this just amazing taste experience.
Plus, for being a Midnight Menu Plus One listener, they'll give you 10% off your bill at Wayfare.
Wayfare is open 7 days from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday until 10 on weeknights. And it's on that new hip part of Ferret Street. Remember to tell them that we sent you for Midnight Menu Plus One for your 10% discount. It's honestly one of my favorite spots. Well, Margot, I'm really looking forward to talking with our guest tonight. We have with us today Lauren Godin, the food goddess. She has a passion for all things food and drink. She's a food editor and reporter for national, regional, and local publications. She's on TV and radio stations as well. She's the creator of and founder of 50 Fork and specializing in culinary, social media, and web content. I think she's also the creator of My Stupid Stomach, which she's going to tell us about as she chases down the what, where, and edible that's gluten-free in our 504. And if she doesn't have a cocktail in hand, she's got a fork. But she's always eating and drinking, and she's got lots to share about that. So with no further ado, let's introduce Lauren.
Hey there.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here.
Thanks. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
So we have a lot to get into about what you're doing currently.
Okay.
So you're so prolific in all these
That's fair.
forms of media and mediums. But I wanted to know a little bit about you. You obviously are a great communicator.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd like to think I am.
But how did you get started in food? Like, what was
Okay.
your passion? And
what's the genesis, so to
Yes.
speak? Well, I've always been a really big food geek. I mean, from really time immemorial, I really, it's not cliche for me to say that at all. I've lived in a lot of places, and I lived in Portugal, I've lived all over the United States, and so I had developed very young the interest in eating very broadly, very widely, and never really thought about a career in food. I mean, that really didn't exist I think in my landscape or in any landscape, really, to be honest. And I really wanted to be the first female Supreme Court Justice of the United States, but that ship sailed. and I came down here to go to college, and I am a very, very serious food person. So when I came here, I was 16, getting ready to make 17 in my freshman year at Loyola, and I got here and I walked around the French Quarter. And long story short, everywhere I went, I was introduced to something new and incredible that I'd never had before. And I walked into the Desire Cafe, and there were big giant piles of what I thought were langoustine, because that's what they looked like to me. And so I said to the guy behind the bar, I said, "Oh, wow, you guys eat langoustine?" And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, "Lady, those are crawfish." And I said, "Crawfish? Ooh, I used to have one as a pet. I thought, you eat those?" And I had no idea. And he gave me a portion of crawfish, and I just went crazy. I mean, it was beautiful. And from there, I ended up at Arnaud's having Café Brûlot and Coquille Saint-Jacques, which I was blown away. I couldn't imagine. Went around the corner, was walking the street, and there was this gorgeous, gorgeous Creole chef standing against a beautiful pink building with his very tall toque. And I peeked in the kitchen door and said, "What is this place?" And he said, you're at Brennan's. And I said, really, what is Brennan's? And he said, you've never been? I said, no, I've just come to town and I'm just starting college. He said, come in here, young lady, and brought me in and made me bananas Foster. And it was Mike Roussel.
Oh, nice.
And so Chef Mike Roussel, this is my entree to the city, was all about food. Again, not thinking too much about the kismet of that. Went about my business at, being a co-ed at Loyola and cross-registering at Tulane and doing the regular thing that one does. And when I got done with college, I was in charge of orientation and training. No, that's wrong. I was the associate in charge of orientation and training for the World's Fair. And I trained all of the non-management employees. And my degree is in theater. So what they had me do was really talk with non-management people about how to be polite to guests that were coming to the World's Fair, which, if you know me, is fairly hilarious because I'm pretty direct and, and I kind of... not a great filter.
So you're the reason why I failed.
I don't want to own that. I hope not. But what would happen was that I would train these people and tell them how the proper way to say it, Trout Manure, because, visitors will come and sometimes we'll say things like Trout Manure. And, you want to laugh, but you have to.
And that doesn't sound very tasty.
No, and as a server, you have to remember to say, oh, yes, that is a really fabulous dish. That Trout Manure is just wonderful. And then someone will say, oh, is that how it's said? So I did that, and I tried to do it with some humor. So then as I walked around the World's Fair site, I would run into different people, and they would say, oh, you that funny lady, I remember you. And so I got, I guess, sort of known for being the funny lady who would tell them how to say things politely. Again, a food component there that I didn't anticipate. Roll the hands of time fast forward. I cooked and all the time, and a crazy cook, collector of cookbooks and anything to do with cooking. I just love it. I've always felt it very cathartic. I really liked it a lot. So would watch Channel 12. I used to love all those shows, and Justin Wilson and Nona Galasso. I mean, just all those people that from the old school of Channel 12 of PBS cooking, and I loved it so much. My husband decided, and at that time we were just dating, he decided he wanted to go to
Loyola too?
He was at Loyola too. We had graduated. He was in law school by this point, and he decided he was going to go and do his summer program in Paris. And I said, oh, well, if you think you're going on your own, you're sadly mistaken. If you're going to Paris, you're taking me. And I applied to culinary school. And I applied to La Varenne, and I applied to Cordon Bleu, and I applied to the Ritz Escoffier. And I was very lucky to have been accepted by all of them. Surprising, because I really sort of wrote the most bullshit essay you could ever possibly write, because I hadn't done anything really hands-on. I mean, this is 1989, and other than my own kitchen, I hadn't been in a kitchen in a restaurant at all, working in that way. So I got my way in. I went to the Ritz Escoffier, and they invited me to stay for their long program. I ended up staying for just the summer program, and just went head over heels. I mean, I kind of became a little bit of the pet, and I was the one that they would send to the market and go to the market with them at 4 a.m. and Leal, and and I pretended that I spoke no French. So I pretended I was just this rangy American girl, no big deal. Until one day we were in the kitchen cooking, and one of the chefs was poking fun at the director of the program, who's an expat New Orleanian, rest his soul. He has since passed away. And they were making fun of him, and it was pretty humorous, and I burst out laughing, and they both turned and looked
Realized
at me.
You knew what they were
saying.
It.
And that was the end of that. And then I became sort of the official representative and translator for anybody from America, or from the U.S., I should say, because Canadians were there as well, but from the U.S., who came to the Ritz and would take in the afternoon the degustation classes. So I would sit in the back, tired as tired can be. We were all just zonked. I mean, we worked really, really hard all the time. And the really Tony guests would come in, and they would sit and they would do these demonstration classes do these demonstration classes and ask really, really crazy questions that Americans like. What's the difference between a brown egg and a white egg? And of course, undoubtedly the translator would go, Lauren, these are your people. Lauren, where are you? Hello. And I just like, oh my God, Tex, please. Brown eggs and white, there's no difference between a brown egg and a white egg. Or they would ask crazy things like, do they use bulk sausage in the hotel? Like, Jimmy Dean bulk sausage? You're really going to ask this chef if he uses Jimmy Dean sausage? I mean, come on. But at the end, so everyone, it was an amazing time because it was so interesting. I learned a lot from two sides of that coin, actually, about what Americans did not understand about food, which was very interesting, or some Americans, I should say, and what I needed to know about food. And it was just incredible. And I would stand in my uniform on Rue Cambon outside of the Chanel store, like peering into the window like one does at Mervyn's, going open, 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 and they would tell me to shoo because I was wearing, my checks and the whole uniform, and you couldn't go into the hotel. It's at Place Vendôme, and they didn't allow you to go into the hotel wearing your uniform because, you're a low man on the totem pole, and I was really low man on the totem pole.
Well, I'm going to step back just a little bit, but it's interesting to me. One of the things that is interesting about what you're saying is that they really took to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, did you have to work in the kitchen and prove yourself?
Oh.
Or, I mean, is that
Yeah.
why was it literally a cooking thing, or your ethic, your work ethic, or your personality?
I think
Because
it's
I
a
don't
combination.
hear that it's not usually. I mean, I've never heard such a welcoming story in a
Well, first of all, it's an old school European kitchen. So I think the adage, if you can't take the heat, really does apply. And I can. I am no weenie by any stretch of the imagination. And, if they tell me to turn mushrooms or turn, tourner, which is right to carve vegetables shaped like olives, more or less, 7-sided, yeah? And so if my job was to do that, I would turn the shit out of those things. I mean,
But how did you know how to do it? If
you watched and you learn and you talk and you make mistakes. I mean, and you really make mistakes and you get yelled at, and then you don't cry like
It
a big
didn't
ass
crush
baby.
you. Okay.
No, you say oui chef, no chef. Bon, you just keep moving and grooving, and you just don't. You fix it and you keep going. You burn your hand, you keep going. None of this wah stuff. And I think that they were rather surprised. I think that I didn't, crumble like collapse like a bunch of broccoli or whatever. They didn't collapse. I just did my thing and I kept going.
Now, you intended to be a chef at this point?
Actually, I didn't know what I was going to do with it, Ray. I really didn't. My intent was just to get the education because I love classic French cooking so much, and I just wanted to have a base of knowledge of what I was doing, just more info, just adding to that. To me as a human, right. I really had no goal with it. I came back. I worked for a short time with Emerald in the kitchen and was peeling onions. No big deal. But we had a child at that point, and so it was very difficult to keep that going. And I mean, working in a kitchen and having children is really, really tough. I don't care if you're the man or the woman. It's very difficult. And the interesting part about it, so I left that, and I had studied it when I was in college also to be a paralegal. So I just went ahead and did my paralegal thing and was working as a paralegal, and I was working for the Internal Revenue Service. I was in law enforcement for 3 years in the criminal investigation unit, weapons trained the whole, yeah.
Wow, really?
You are definitely not a weenie.
Huh.
No.
Now, what did you need a weapon for the IRS? What were you doing?
In the criminal investigation unit of the Internal Revenue Service in Louisiana, they had Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. They were taking down drug dealers. It's food stamp trafficking, money laundering, drug trafficking, et cetera, et cetera. My job was asset seizure and forfeiture. So
you go on the scene when they were raiding the place. So that's
right. And then basically I would go shopping, and then my friends who know me are laughing because they know that that's my favorite pastime. I would go in basically and I would identify those things that were assets that had been purchased with dirty money that we could seize and sell, and it paid for law enforcement. And so it was a fascinating thing, though, to do that kind of work, and you learn a great deal. And by the way, it is where I learned as much as I could learn about Vietnamese food in New Orleans and dining, because I was friends with two of the agents who were Vietnamese, and they wanted to go eat Vietnamese food. And I'm sure, let's go. And they were like, really? So most agents and law enforcement people, and I love you law enforcement people, you know I love you.
They were
but
meat
you
and potatoes
eat
kind of people.
terribly. They are the worst eaters ever on the planet. They eat just awful
Fast food.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
And these guys wanted to take me to eat real food, and I was so excited. So I really learned from the inside out how to navigate the Vietnamese community in New Orleans, and they were actually really rather petrified. So of law enforcement and justifiably, these people, they came over in the 70s. They don't really know the older people. They're scared. Is this the revenuer? Are they going to shut me down? And, and luckily enough, I pierced that veil and became friends with a lot of the families, the original restaurant families of Vietnamese in New Orleans. And to this day, I'm a huge, huge fan of the food and the people and the culture.
Now, did you ever get involved in shutting down something or going after something that that it really had a great product you liked, like a restaurant, maybe like a favorite restaurant or a favorite grocery store?
If I tell you, I'd have to shoot you later. I unfortunately am not at liberty to talk about that. I really was.
That would be really discouraging. It's like, I don't want to do this. I'm not gonna be able to get that po' boy anymore. No.
No, it's really interesting though, because you do have to be respectful, and I can't really talk about anything that I worked on. I worked on some very big cases involving some very big, important
you put Edward Edwards' weight, didn't you?
I might have been involved in working on that case.
Whoa, no, you got to tell us then. We're not letting you out if you tell us.
But the big point for me was I ate all the time. And when I got to eat, and then I got the opportunity to write for Gambit. They were looking for someone to do food features while I was at IRS. I lied to them and said yes that I had written on food. I went home that night. I wrote an 800-word piece on Vietnamese egg roll, faxed it in, and that was the beginning of the end. That was 1998. So that's how I became a food writer.
Oh, wow.
So your experiences with the IRS gave you good information on egg rolls and
on Vietnamese cuisine particularly.
So they approached you from Gambit, like you weren't like.
No. I didn't know that food writing really existed as a career. I had no idea. I was reading Jean Borg, of course, and at that time in the Pic. I mean, you would read it, but I didn't know that was a career for me. I always considered myself somewhat cerebral, even if I'm a bit quirky, and so that was it. No, I never thought about it at all. And they approached me and asked me if I had ever written anything on food, and I lied and said yes. So, and then I wrote it.
How did you? This is going back a little bit, but how did you gain the confidence, besides like saying you could do it and then just doing it? It seems like a lot of experiences in your life, you're very confident. And is that always been the case, or have you had people influence you in some way that
I think I'm a survivor by nature. And I think that has always served me. So I think my confidence that you perceive as confidence is probably my biggest defense, if you will, mechanism to protect the little kind of soft, squishy side that really is me more. And I just sort of always have been take the bull by the horns. I mean, if you want to get it done, do it. And and yes, I've had oodles of people influence me. The lady who raised me was from Troy, Alabama, and she was in my life from the time I was 6 months old until the time I was 15. And, some people may say, oh, well, how lovely for you that you had a nanny or a housekeeper. She wasn't my nanny or my housekeeper. She was my mother of my heart. And so I resent it greatly when people, poo-poo that because she wasn't just anything. And she was a very profound influence on me. She taught me how to cook. She taught me how to cook chitlins and fried chicken and greens and peach pie, and she taught me how to eat, and she taught me how to dance, and she taught me how to appreciate music, and she taught me to love Ernie Banks. And so that I can't even it brings tears to my eyes to even think about it. And my grandmother, who died in 1988, another very, very profound influence on me, taught me to drink brandy and appreciate wine, and we would sit in her bed at night and drink brandy and watch Carson and needlepoint and together. So I've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful for the good fortune that I've had. And so my confidence, I think, is really, like I said, it's real, but it is also the way I can protect myself, if you will. It's a survival instinct a bit. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Looks like your plus one is here. Would you like to
Thank
introduce her?
goodness. Yay! We can talk about her. Okay, hooray. So my plus one, I would love to introduce her. So I met this really amazing gal. Right after the storm, we came back to town. I came back very early. Obviously, my buddy was too. And both of us food people, foodies and food writers of a sort. And she was working for NewOrleans.com, and they had reached out to me to work with them and doing some food writing and some other things. And I met my pal Kim Ranjbar at NewOrleans.com, and Kim and I have been really good friends ever since then. And so that was like right after the storm, right, Kim?
Yeah.
Which means that we've been pals coming up on 9+ years.
Yeah.
And we've worked together that long. And she's amazing. And Kim writes sucktheheads.com, and she writes amazing blogs. And she also has Nola Hooch and Nola Food Porn. And she's got a great eye and a great palate. And not only that, she's just got a great spirit. And I really love her a lot. So that's my plus one, is my pal, Kim Ranjbar.
Am I allowed to cry?
Yeah, you can.
Wow.
Make it loud because they can't see you. You got to blubber.
Well, I'm really flattered. Thank you very much.
You deserve it. We've had so much fun, haven't we?
Oh yeah, she's been my mentor. Seriously, I mean, the things I've dealt with, the things I've gone through with her, and what she's taught me, and
We had fun. We've had fun.
Yes.
About life or your most writing
food,
and
life, everything. I mean, she's like my mom away from home.
Yay! Isn't that nice? I love that. I like being everybody's mom. It's awesome. I think that's wonderful. It was so much fun. Well, because what Kim brings to the table, she's a really good techie, so she knows that technical background, and of course I know just enough to be dangerous. So she really balanced that out. Also, Kim's approach to food writing, as I perceived it, was a much more of a layperson, sort of a more man on the street. I have a tendency to be snobby, for a lack of a better word. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. I do prefer fine dining and fine food. Now, does that mean I don't eat Taco Bell? No, it doesn't. It means I do eat Taco Bell when I get in the mood for it. I'm not that big of a snob, but I do have a definite bent to my work and what I prefer. And she brings such a really rich and diverse aspect to this whole thing that I thought was incredible, and she got it. You know what I mean? There are a lot of people writing who don't get it. What they want to talk about is themselves, and they want to navel gaze and tell us about their experience. And Kim tells us not just her experience, but why we do or don't want to go someplace. And I really applaud that. I thought it's incredible. I love you, sister.
Well, thank you.
Now, Kim, how did you get into writing, and where are you from originally?
I'm from the Bay Area, San Mateo, California. I moved here about 11 years ago, right before the storm. I was here 2 years before it let go. That was heartbreaking. Let's see. I've always written, not necessarily about food. I do creative writing on my own. I've written, one of the jobs I worked for, I was doing abstracts and indexing for national newspapers for the Thompson Group. I don't know if you've heard of the Merlin product for libraries.
Oh,
you
sure.
see it everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't search modern periodicals without Merlin. Let's see. Then when I moved here, I was working at NewOrleans.com, and
Did you move here to work for NewOrleans.com? Is that how you got here?
no, actually, I fell in love with New Orleans through reading. I'm a voracious reader, and so many books I had read and dealt with the South and New Orleans in particular, and I fell in love with it, and I always wanted to come here. I tried to come here to go to college first, but my parents wouldn't let me go. Finally, I had graduated college. I'd been working for a while. I lost my job. I got laid off in California. My job got sent out to India because they were paying 3 times less than what they were paying us here, but whatever. And I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity. I said, well, now's the time. And I came here to visit, picked out an apartment, and I moved.
Was it the abstracting job that got moved to India? What got moved to India?
Actually, they outsourced to India. It was the
They
abstracting
outsourced the
job.
abstracting to
Yeah.
India. Wow.
Of our national papers, you know.
Right,
like,
right.
Yeah.
Seems odd. That's the
It
last thing I
does.
expect. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, okay. That makes sense. I don't,
I guess it makes more sense than all the customer service being, the telephone customer
Right.
service being from India. That makes even less sense to me.
Right.
Right. With
Dealing
the
with
accents and all that. Yeah.
Right. Definitely. So when I moved here, I started working actually at Kelly Daybite at first, and I was just handling their internet sales. I was doing. They did like a big promotion for Pistol Pete. They do chef's clothes. They've been around for a long time. But then right after the storm, I got a job with NewOrleans.com, and I was handling the content on their website, and they were really lacking in the food department.
She was being really polite because a certain someone whose last name rhymes with it's Norris was writing at the time.
Well, I was really frustrated because, I was basically the editor, so he would send all his pieces into me, and the pieces were not current. Nothing was post, Katrina. So, and everything changed after Katrina, every owners changed, chefs changed, menus changed. So I didn't think his reviews were accurate anymore, and I called him on it, and he hasn't liked me since.
And me neither, but that's okay. I like you and you like me, so that's all right. We're a happy family.
But yeah. And then I met Lauren, and she was working with NewOrleans.com for a little while, and when she left, we were kind of, in this empty zone, and so I just offered. I said, "Hey, I've been at that point in time, I was dieting," and I said,
You were writing a cool piece. You should tell them about that. That was really cool.
It was the
Thursday the cheat.
The cheat sheet, yeah.
What's that?
Once a week, I would cheat on my diet and eat at a restaurant around town, and I would report on it.
That's
and
hysterical.
Tell me how fabulous, right?
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Fabulous, isn't
And I
it?
was still
Yeah.
losing weight, so
Yeah.
She had lost an insane amount of weight, and all the while writing this once a week cheat column, and I went crazy. I said, this has got to be in a publication. It has to happen. So I really fought like the devil to get it in a local publication, and she continued to write it. But it's genius, isn't it?
It
Yeah,
is
it's
absolutely
right.
because so many people can relate to that. Who wants, critiquing a restaurant or finding negative things, that's not very interesting to
No,
me.
But it leads, and you know how the manual works.
Yeah. but I mean to really hear about someone's experiences, and that's really clever.
It was awesome. It was
it
fun
was
read.
real.
too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fun.
It's a fun thing to read, but then I started to see that she was really tapped in, and so I was doing a lot of different and I'm like, you ought to go for it. You're really writing what people want to read about. This is fantastic. And it didn't matter whether she went to a place that I was covering. Who cares, for God's sakes? That's such nonsense. All this weird competitiveness is so for the birds. I can't even begin to tell you how much I think it's for the birds, because it is not about getting in first. It's not about, pithy prose. It's about writing something that people want to read, and that is what Kim does. She writes what people want to read, and it's fabulous.
And
so
do you get
that's great.
did you get positive reinforcement once you were
For
getting it out there?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. Yeah, it surprised me, actually.
Not
more and more
me.
people were coming to my blog. And
I knew that it was genius. So.
yeah, she hooked me up with doing a monthly column for New Orleans Living Magazine, and I'm still writing for them. And then also Where You At? I'm doing their 15 and under and food news. And
I worked for them as their food editor and created this whole kind of food section for Josh Danzig at Where You At, including the 15 and under, which they'd been doing something similar, but it needed a little sharpening of the edges, if you will. And then I came up with City Sustainability, which was all about this woman who was living in town who was basically raising her own animals and slaughtering them and eating them and raising a sustainable garden. This is years and years ago. I mean,
Jordan, right?
Jordan Shea, and she won a press club award for that column. It was really really, there are all these incredible people tucked in the nooks and crannies of the city writing this just amazing things, and I luck out and I feel I find them, and then I'm like, get this opportunity to let them shine, and it's so much fun. So Kim took over 15 and under for me because I was done. I needed to do other things, and Jordan's writing city sustainability, and then for a time we had the other people, the conscious palate, and tasting notes, which was musicians and food. Then there would recommend a chef, and then we'd go to that chef's restaurant, and that chef would recommend his or talk about his favorite band, and we'd go to that band.
Oh, I love that.
And round and round and round it went, and
That's
that was
great.
a ton of fun.
Oh, wow. What was that called?
A lot of soul food.
It was
Yeah,
called
tasting
Tasting
notes.
Notes.
Yeah.
Tasting Notes. How did I miss that? That sounds awesome. What was that in?
In where you at?
And where you at? Okay, cool. Wow.
And is it still in the publication? Are they still doing a version of it?
I think they stopped it because it.
Well, did
started
it
to get
peter
really
itself
difficult.
out?
Yeah.
It petered out.
Eventually, you start getting a loop. It was the same places.
Right, the same places or the same musicians. Yeah.
Everyone's
exactly.
like, Trombone Shorty. And we did that.
Even
Guess
though we
again.
did. Right. Exactly. So that was really fun. But Where You At is a really interesting place to get your feet wet, for young food writers. And so that was a great opportunity. And Kim's still writing for them, which is incredible. And Barry, the cocktail columnist, was there writing there for them, and now she's moved on,
like Edible and Sports Illustrated
and Maxim, and holy smoke! I mean, she's really busted out, and she's a great cocktail writer. I mean, there are really incredible writers in town, and you just have to read them and go past a few of the others who are not so wonderful to
So
read.
do y'all think now the culture has changed a little bit with food? I mean, all those amazing venues for writing, and do you think the personalities that are I don't know how to word it, but that they're more on the not
On
as,
the, not
on
as
the
relevant?
Yes, not as relevant.
They are
and-
correct.
and,
That is correct.
And so is it natural, or is the community changing, like how people are collaborating and
I think it's a
supportive, or-
combination, Margot. What do you think, Kim? I mean, I really do think it's a combination because God love him, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, but Mr. Fitzmaurice has become irrelevant because he is who he is. What he does is a fabulous thing on a particular subject. And he'll be furious with me. I've called him the dining Methuselah, and he's just been furious as he can be at me about it. And
that blog got so many hits.
Because he was being the dining Methuselah. So the thing about that is, without beating a dead horse, is that he is really brilliant at what he does, which is to explore the scene of New Orleans and the history of New Orleans cookery. What I don't think he has been his best showing has been coming forward and being contemporary. And I don't mean eating a lavender-soaked cotton ball off the end of a hanger. Okay, I'm not talking about that, for God's sakes. What I'm saying is that he's just not on the ground.
Where can I get
He's
that?
not
That sounds awesome.
I can tell you.
So what you're saying is he's not connecting with what people are really interested in, perhaps?
Well, not the younger set. He still really has quite a big fan base for what he does.
Oh, yeah.
And it's respected. I mean, I respect
Certainly.
that, just like you're saying the history.
Certainly.
But it's just not, there's so much that you can tie in to the history and talk about.
And I have to be really frank with you, because I think that the food and cooking knowledge that comes out of that source is not solid. I'm sorry, it just isn't. And also, I really think it's important that people who are writing on food have spent some time in a restaurant working. I don't mean sitting at a table with your pinky in the air. I mean in the kitchen, in the dining room, behind the bar. Please get off your ass, please. If you're going to become an authority, become a flipping authority.
Yeah.
Do it. I mean, I've bartended for a million years. I've waited tables, Kim. I know you've done stuff. I worked in the kitchens. I mean, for crying out loud, doesn't mean that I know everything, but at least I have a solid foundation. And I happen to know that many of our food writers locally have none of that.
Yeah.
So I don't really take them very seriously. So back to the relevancy, no, I don't consider them relevant.
Okay. Well, before we get back into some of these issues, but no,
Sorry.
No. But we have to. We are coming up. We're going off the menu, and that's where we're going to ask you a couple of questions that you wouldn't be asked in culinary school or at a job interview. At least not a job interview I guess you would particularly want. So, but before we get to that, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Petite Pet Care. If you are going out of town or you schedule keeps you away from home, if you're, working your ass off in a kitchen and you just can't get home to your pet, Petite Pet Care have you covered. They come to your house so you don't have to board your pet or take them to doggy daycare or doggy night care. For loving care when you're not there, go to petitepetcare.com.
And Margaret, we'd also be remiss if we did not also thank Wayfair for giving us, our Midnight Menu Plus One listeners, a 10% off discount on their fantastic Wayfair menu. Plus, they have a 3-hour happy hour every day from 4 to 7. Chef Kevin White puts fine dining into a sandwich, and the bartenders put all kinds of great stuff into the cocktails. Okay, as promised, we're going off the menu with our special guest, Lauren Godin, and her plus one, Kim Ranch Bar. We're going to ask you a question you wouldn't normally be asked in culinary school. So why don't you start, Margot?
Okay, Lauren, I own a restaurant, and you've come in to apply for a chef's position. You really want to work at my restaurant. And everything on the menu, I have one item on the menu because I'm really care about the Louisiana environment, and it's Nutria. So I'd like to know, to get the job, how would you prepare Nutria as an appetizer, an entree, and dessert?
Dessert. That's a good one.
Yes.
Okay, so Nutria as an appetizer. Well, I think the most obvious thing is to make sausage, Okay, so that's...
Quick on her feet.
Yeah,
that's
well,
nice.
There you are. And I would probably do it with some kind of really cool mustard alongside. And that is, by the way, inspired by my darling pal, Chef Greg Saunier, who, in my opinion, makes the most delicious sausages and mustards, and that's what popped into my brain. An entree. Well, Nutria...
But not with Nutria, though, he doesn't.
Oh, yeah, no, never. Nutria
Which we
really
should be,
only had its
quick
moment
to-
in the sun.
Somebody's going, I had such great sausage there last week. I didn't know it was
Thank
Nutria.
you, Ray.
Yuck.
Absolutely not. Thank you for saying that. For an entree, because Nutria is gamey, it's probably best stewed. So I would probably do a debris kind of a thing for an entree, maybe over some kind of a fabulous biscuit. On the dessert side of things, well, good night. That would be really interesting. So I think that probably the best thing that you could do would be to do sort of a savory sweet grilled cheese sandwich maybe for dessert. Maybe some chocolate and in there, and maybe some of that debris. And maybe something, a little sweet element to create like a little dessert, a savory sweet grilled cheese type sandwich. On my feet, that's about as best as I can.
You have the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Nutria sounded great to me just now.
Wow.
Thank you so much. You're hired.
That's
Thanks.
Wow, you're good at pop quizzes. That was impressive. All right, now my turn. Kim, I'm just going to ask this. This is boring if you listen to the show. I'll ask the same one every time. It's predictable. But just if you had one person to eat a meal with in the whole world that's alive today, you could have a one-on-one meal in New Orleans with anybody. Who would it be? And why?
That's a...
I know that's so many to choose from. Just what's the first one that pops in your head?
As dorky as this sounds, I'd say Anne Rice.
All right. That's a great answer. Tell us why.
Which she was one of the authors that I read voraciously. She's the one who made me feel New Orleans before I even got here. So, and also she likes to eat.
Yeah, where would you take her?
Probably Patois.
All right.
It's like my running favorite right now.
Nice. Cool.
Cool.
So, speaking of Patois, where would y'all? Well, we know you. That's your running favorite right now. But Lauren, where, if you're going out, where would be your next meal? Perhaps.
Holy smoke! That depends on what time of day it is, what the weather's like outside. My favorite meal is the one I'm eating at the very moment that I'm eating it.
Okay.
I really and truly don't have a favorite place, and I really kind of shoot from the hip. I try to get out everywhere that I can, and with the number of restaurants that we have currently, it's a very daunting task. So, I make my way around. I may not get to you as quickly, and I definitely do not go in to a restaurant for any purposes of writing or writing in the first week or even sometimes the first month. That's just my particular style. It does not mean I do not love you. I love all the chefs in New Orleans. I think their creative artistry is amazing, and they know that I love them very, very much, and that I'll get there. So I can tell you that on my way here tonight, I stopped at Del Fuego because I had a craving for guacamole, and I thought, well, I'm going to go check that out and have a big loaded guacamole, and it had bacon bits and pomegranate seeds and chili peppers, and it was spectacular and yummy, and they're making their own fresh tortillas.
I was going to say, they haven't been open that long. They've only been open a week or so, right?
And more than just about 2+
2
weeks.
Okay.
And the reason I have gone in there is that I'm not going to fake it. They're friends, and they were very gracious and invited me in for friends and family when they opened the doors. And I just was on my way here and wanted something quick and wanted something I know is fresh made, and so I popped right in there right before I got here.
Now, do you probably get recognized at a lot of places you go? Is there a way to stay anonymous? Do you wear a disguise?
No, that's such a bunch of nonsense. I just don't come in saying, hello, I'm here, and what are you feeding me? I don't act like an... Can you say asshole?
Oh, yeah.
You said it all already. Don't worry about it. It's too late now if you can't. No, it's good.
I just don't act like an asshole. I go in, I do my thing. Sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm just dining, for gosh sakes.
Right.
I just want to eat a meal. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the same for you, Kim?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to go places with her without people recognizing her, though.
But it's more like fun,
No,
right?
It's,
It's
just that
like
she,
y'all are...
yeah. It's totally relaxed. Every,
'Cause-
people, oh, hi, how's it going? It's
And we gossip a lot, and that's terrible. I'm definitely involved in the gossip chain.
It's awesome, though. I've met a lot of interesting people through them. Seriously. A lot of chefs.
Chefs are interesting people, aren't they?
They really are.
Yeah, they are.
Ever get intimidated when they realize that if there's a food writer there? I guess they get that a lot in New Orleans, but still, you ever get the sense that they feel intimidated?
No.
No.
Yeah, no way.
No way.
Nah.
I
They get
would-
excited.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, it stems from the style of writing that y'all do. You both seem to celebrate things going on in the city and what people are doing, and I would imagine
We have a
people are-
motto, basically, and I say we because I shared this with Kim, and if you don't agree, please feel free to say it, my dear. But it's a lot more fun to tell people where there's something fun and fabulous and wonderful than there is to tear someone down.
Right.
And even though I spent some time tearing someone down, in my heart of hearts, I really do appreciate and love what's going on. So that at the end of the day, it is much more fun to tell people where to go to get something great than to, rip someone a new one. Although I know it's very popular to rip people a new one. I'm not I don't do that in my writing.
I totally agree. In the magazines, I definitely always talk about the good. There's no point, really, in talking about the bad. The only time I kind of let loose is on my blog, but those are personal experiences. So I'm telling them this is what happened when I went into the restaurant, not necessarily picking at anybody. This is just what my experience was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, this might be... I want to know how your book experience has been received and how you feel about that experience, because
Sure.
it's New Orleans Chef's Table, correct?
Right, it is. Well, I was approached to write that by Globe Pequot, and I think they have since been bought by somebody. But they are owned by Morris Publications, and it's a series that they do across the country. So there's Chef's Table Houston and Chef's Table Charlotte, et cetera. And they came to me and asked me to do it, and the experience was hair-raising. I mean, it's tough, and you got to buckle down and write a lot of words, and I had a particular way that I really wanted to do it, which was a more contemporary style. It was stylistically different than the other models that they had done, and they were very gracious about it and let me do it. The experience was, in the end, exhilarating. The book is selling nicely. My goodness, I'm certainly not going to be buying my villa in Italy anytime soon, but I'm happy with that. I'm not one of those people that has the great American novel buried deep in my soul. That's not... I never even considered writing a book at all until I was approached to do that, and I don't know if I'd ever do another one. It was really a pain in the ass. It was terrible.
Well, I know the clock's ticking and we're running
sorry.
low on time, so I won't. No, you have nothing to be sorry about. I just want to make sure we cover one topic that I'm particularly interested in. It's become like a theme for us the last few weeks. I don't know why, but it just keeps coming up again and again. I know you were diagnosed with celiac disease, and that's got to be hard for somebody that eats out a lot. And so you started a blog about it, and My Stupid Stomach, right? And can you tell us a little bit about that and what that's about? And
I sure will.
How long that's been and.
Certainly will. So My Stupid Stomach is something I say all the time. And a gal that I'm friendly with named Nina Camacho one day said, Lauren, you say that so often, you should call it, that shouldn't be the name for your blog. And I thought, she's right. And so I did. And it was because all the time I would eat something and I would say, I'm sorry, you guys, I can't. My stupid stomach. Ugh. And it was really true. And being diagnosed with celiac, listen, this goes back a really long way. I was diagnosed at 19 with what they thought was diverticulitis and irritable bowel syndrome and the whole series of things that go with that and coming and forward. And I kept getting sick and I kept getting sick. And as you can see, I'm not wasting away. I don't have the wasting side of this disease. I'm on the pizza and Twinkie diet, although it's gluten-free. And what happened was I finally got so sick, and I've gotten food poisoning. I can't even tell you how many times, and I've had E. coli 3.
Oh, no.
Yeah, such as it's a job hazard. And so I got really, really sick, and I finally went to a guy who did the proper testing. I was scoped. I've had the blood test, confirmed the diagnosis. Yes, it's celiac.
And when was that?
And that was October.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's a pretty big gap from 19. You're at least 23 years old now, so it's been a while.
Kind of you. Yes, Grandma Godan over here. I'm a new grandma. It really was amazing. And we're talking about 34 years of having such a rough go with my stomach that was unbelievable, and nobody knew back then. I mean, you thought that it was stress related, and they gave you all kinds of crazy. I was on phenobarbital at one point in time because they thought it was stress related. So if they chilled you out, that would chill out everything. And now what we now know is that the gut is a second brain, and that we know so much more about the whole thing. So yes, it's been very interesting, and thank you to the chefs who do not roll their eyes at me and think that I'm trying to pretend I'm Gwyneth Paltrow, although I really wish I could be.
The resemblance is striking, though.
Yes, I know, right? And because it really is a pain in it's a pain in the butt, and all puns intended. Because the truth of the matter is that there are people who are eating for dietary reasons or just because they don't want to eat gluten. And you know what? Feed them. They're paying you money. Stop having an attitude and get over yourself.
Right.
But for those of us who have celiac and really and truly have an issue, I'm grateful that there are chefs who really take care of us, and there's at least a couple places in town. We talked about, we've talked to Peace Baker came
Peace
up.
Baker we had on the show,
and Fair
we had on the show too. Yeah,
fabulous.
Right. Yeah.
And so
love
there are
them both.
places, love them both, thankfully, and that's becoming more recognized and more accepted and more places. And I'm very, very fortunate. The New Orleans tourism and marketing people, I'm writing some gluten-free, how to navigate New Orleans gluten-free for them. And it's really fun. And then
great.
I talked today with Molly Kimball, and we're going to coordinate our efforts for Eat Fit NOLA, and I'm going to help with the gluten-free component of that.
Cool.
So, turning lemons into lemonade. Yikes, what a horrible cliche.
And can you tell us the blog one more time? I mean,
Certainly. It's called My Stupid Stomach NOLA, if you want to. It's a Tumblr. MyStupidStomachNOLA.com.
Who's going to forget that, though? That's as memorable as it gets. Yeah.
Thank you, Nina Camacho. That was really her. That's her genius. That was wonderful, and good for her for coming up with it.
And how are people going to learn about through the tourism?
I probably should plug that. Thank you, Margot. I write for GoNOLA.com. I had been doing a podcast for them. I had nothing to do with gluten-free. The gluten-free pieces are on GoNOLA.com. Sometimes they get pushed across the platform to Visit New Orleans, and more forthcoming.
Okay, great. And Kim, we're running out of time, but
It's okay.
will you tell everyone about some of your sites, how they can learn more and read more from you? And
sucktheheads.com, nolafoodporn.com, nolahooch.com.
I spell hooch because people spell it
with
the
the
other
T, HOOTCH.
See, I'm a marketing person.
There you go. That's good.
Also on Where You At, nolawoman.com, and New Orleans Living Magazine.
Excellent. Well, y'all, unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we really appreciate you both joining us on Midnight Menu. And
thank you so much.
We know, your time is precious. Y'all are both very active people, so we can't thank you enough for joining us.
Thank
Well,
you.
once again, our special guest tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One was the great Lauren Godin, and with too many ventures to list here, but her plus one, no, that's good. Her plus one is Kim Ranch Bar, and you can find out more about both of their ventures, from everything from the 504 to the My Stupid Stomach to the Nola Hooch to, I'm not going to try to name them all because I'll mess them up. Lots and lots of them you just heard, by following links on our website. It's neworleans.com. So just go there and we will have links from all these things and anything else we can find.
And we want to give another thanks to our sponsors this evening, Wayfair on Ferret Street, and remind our listeners that you get 10% off everything on the menu when you tell them you heard it on Midnight Menu Plus One. And thanks also to Petite Pet Care and to Monkey Hill Bar on Magazine Street. See you next time on Midnight Menu Plus One. Till then, I'm Margot Moss.
And I'm Ray Kanata. Good night.
Midnight Menu Plus One is produced by Grant Morris, Margot Moss, and Ray Kanata. Our technical producer is Chris Kehoe. Our director of everything else is Mary Ross. Thanks to our sponsors who made tonight's show possible, Wayfair on Ferret Street. As a reward for getting all the way through to the end of the show, you get 10% off your tab when you tell your server, Ray or Margot from Midnight Menu Plus One sent you. Also, Petite Pet Care for loving care when you're not there. Find those guys at petitepetcare.com. If you'd like to be a sponsor of Midnight Menu Plus One, get in touch with us on our website at itsneworleans.com or just email sales@itsneworleans.com. If you'd like to be a guest or suggest a guest for Midnight Menu Plus One, you can do that on our website too. You can find photos from tonight's show, check out our blog, and all sorts of other great stuff on itsneworleans.com, including our other shows. Out to Lunch, Happy Hour, Vietnola, True to the Game, and Mindset. You can hook up with Margot and Ray anytime by following Midnight Menu Plus One on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The awesome audio quality of the show is brought to us in part by Chris Kehoe's Magic, and the rest of it is done by PreSonus Audio. More information about all the wonderful sound recording equipment that PreSonus makes is at their website, presonus.com. Midnight Menu Plus One is a production of INO Broadcasting. For itsneworleans.com, for all of us here at Midnight Menu Plus One, thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here next week around the New Orleans podcast dining table. Ray Kanata and Margot Moss will be back then. Good night.
Okay, my to-do list. 1, start a to-do list. Check. 2, finish the first thing on my to-do list. Killing it. 3, treat myself at JCPenney. Yes!
They're back to school. You're back to you. Hurry in Thursday to Sunday for the Reset and Reconnect sale. Get 50% off select St. John's Bay for him and her. Plus select women's denim for $19.99. Get an extra 25% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon. Find it in the app wallet. JCPenney. Offers valid 8/22 to 8/25. Credit offer subject to credit approval. Exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.